Hello, friend. So glad to have you for the Enneagram and Marriage pod today. We are talking today with Zach Brittle about the stories behind our struggles, Terry Reel's approach to conflict. And Zach is, as many of you probably know, the awesome host of the Marriage Therapy Radio podcast and an Enneagram 8 and an 8-2 relationship. And I'm so glad this episode timed up so well for what I was going through this past weekend, which marked the anniversary of my dad's birthday and made me think about him quite a lot as an 8. We also talk about Zach's dad in this episode. And this episode may get you thinking about your narratives growing up and how those affected and influenced your marriage, because that's what Terry Reel's relationship life therapy is all about, is finding those old narrative patterns and finding really healthy ways to work through them, remembering we're not an island, we're not just in this bubble of our marriage, but that we have a history that brought us through. So it was just really well timed as I was thinking about my dad and all the good of him this weekend, thinking about his and listening to the Willie Nelson, Pancho and Lefty song, Roy Orbison, JFK, Last of the Mohican soundtrack. I took my kids on a drive, went to Starbucks, which my dad loved to go to. We had a book club together. We talked literature, we talked memories, we listened to the Dances with Wolves epic soundtrack. And I also had just reflected with Zach on the harder pieces of my dad. And I hope you'll do that too as you reflect on your marriage, your past relationships. Know that often people are doing the best they can. And so even if you have, like we do, family stories that feel complex and layered, it's awesome to be able to say those people were probably doing the best they could. And hopefully you set whatever boundaries you needed to or still need to. And in your own relationship, you now, today, we hope will get the tools you need to move forward there. Because this relationship is so pivotal for how you're engaging in the world. You don't get as much good self care when your relationship doesn't feel good because you're trying to co regulate for each other. And if you're in conflict, especially conflicts that can last for days, it really messes with you and your balance and your internal processing and just even your window of tolerance. And then you also don't get to lift up and do the beautiful work on the mountain of life where you want to do these beautiful journeys with your passions, with your cares, with your adventuring, with your sexual instinct together and allowing to really thrive. And so, although we can't be up there all the time, this episode is going to help you to get much closer to that, especially because we really are digging into Terry Reel's 4-part theory for how to work with conflict and several other pieces that I think you're going to love. This is a good episode to listen to, not just once, but a couple times to really dig into these methods. And it will probably send you off to Zach's episode that he does all the time every week, as well as send you off to Terry Reel and learn more about his methods and his books. And you'll probably already know his name as somebody in culture who's very big in the marriage therapy space. But I want to let you know that not only has he influenced Bruce Springsteen, Gwyneth Paltrow, Esther Perel goes to him for advice, but Zach is also affiliated with Relational Life Therapy, of course. And Zach also has Gottman training. So today we're getting Zach's really good reflection of his work of over a decade in both of these spaces. And as we talk about on the show, he has a really good clientele space to process through everything because he gets to work in the theory. And then, like me, he gets to work with all the couples. So that's why I'm like, pay attention here. This is a finely tuned episode. You are going to leave it with some great tools. So I'm really excited for you to meet Zach. Let's go ahead and chat with him. Zach, we are so thrilled to have you for the Enneagram and Marriage podcast today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Oh my goodness. We were just talking before we got on. You had a beautiful time at the Terry Real conference. First one they've done. Everyone is excited to learn about Terry Real's method from you. You are close
Mhm.
friends with him. Tell us about yourself, your wife, and of course, your Enneagram types.
Yeah. Yes, I was at a conference a couple months ago. I guess April, late April. It was a conference for the Relational Life Institute. I was privileged to be able to speak there. I wish I could say that Terry and I were good friends. He is a mentor to
Yes.
me, and he's all over the place right now. Terry's work is blowing up, and he jokes because he's written 4 books, and he says it only took me 4 books and 25 years to be an overnight success. Like
That.
Um, so he is reaping the benefit of some hard won, um, work in the therapy field. and I'm privileged to be a part of it. And I get to teach students in the methodology, and I get to use it with my own clients. And like I said, I got to speak at that event, which was all just really, really cool. I love again having my fingers in that world.
Mm.
Um, and it's been a big part of my own like marriage life, my marriage recovery. I'm married to Rebecca.
Mhm.
We our joke is we've been happily married 25 out of 28 years.
I
Um,
love that. I saw something similar on your website. I was going to ask
yeah,
you.
yeah. We've had at least three that were really problematic, and we've had to do chunks of work to
Yeah.
kind of recover. And
Mm,
Terry's lens or the relational life lens has been really, really helpful for me and for her. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram,
mm,
and she's a 2. So
mm,
that comes with some real built-in challenges that we've had to learn a lot about and create a lot of space for. And um, Terry's or the relational life language has been really, really valuable in that for
mm.
us. And we have
Yeah.
2 daughters. They're both, I say they're adulting daughters. They're both graduating. One graduated from college a couple weeks ago, and the other one's graduating from high school next week. Um, and the older one's a 4, and the younger one's an 8. So we're
Mm.
we're a family of 4, 8, 8, 2, or 8, 2, 4, 8.
Wow, that's fascinating. I haven't
Yeah,
ever seen it like that mirror image almost
yeah,
before with types and the body types. That's
hmm,
amazing.
yeah,
And even just hearing that, bringing in the systems thinker that Terry Real is, what a gift
hmm,
to all of you to be in that
hmm.
thinking space together and the
Yeah.
how
We're trying it out.
to.
Yeah.
Uh,
We've heard a rumor, which we've come to believe that 842 is the most challenging triangle on the Enneagram. And so our family went through a lot of real challenging time, particularly during the pandemic, not strictly because of the pandemic, but because that was when my daughter was in kind of the middle of her like primary development time. So she's trying to figure out who she is. She's
Mhm.
doing it as like, one of these artsy, really unique people. Then my wife is trying to like soothe and solve all the issues, and I'm trying to systematize and control everything that's going on. And the three of us I mean, we had a very hard time until we found language, uh, not strictly from the Enneagram, but just language that we put around the
Mm.
three of us to help us navigate some of the like built-in challenges of that particular dynamic. So I'd be grateful to hear about your perspective on that, but whether or not my rumor the rumor is true, but also just yeah, I love having this conversation because it's deeply personal, and also I do use the Enneagram in my practice from time to time.
That's so good that you can align with both tools and know that different systems work in different moments, even with our families. And I am so honored to get to work in the Enneagram space. I would say that the 8 and the 4 are both reactivity types, and the 2, interestingly, has a relationship to 8 and 4. You may know the two's arrows
Mm-hmm.
go to 8 and 4. So
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what you're talking about when you say, wow, this is a perfect storm of reactivity between all of us. When the
Mm-hmm.
2 is in their positivity space, there's some balance there. But then again, the 4 and the 8 are going to demand that the 2 come back to reality and come
Mm-hmm.
into reactivity. Is that
Yeah,
right?
fun times, good times.
So you're all like,
Yeah,
okay, we love each other and we're all very passionate. I get it. And there's
yeah.
some good to that. There really is, by the way, because if you were all withdrawing types completely, I know 4s have some of that. And even the 8 has some of that because you want your time alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's you go to that 5 arrow a lot. It's nice for me to hear that everyone wants some relationship. And I know
Mm-hmm.
Terry's talked about that in his book, Us, that I read. Like when people are just like all the same, there can be a goodness to that. And that's how it is here.
Mm-hmm.
If there was one person who wasn't passionate, I feel like they wouldn't fit in very well, but all of you
Yeah.
are very passionate.
Yeah. You know what we say in our family? All 4 of us are hotheads. Not necessarily that we're angry, but all 4 of us are pretty reactive. And we've kind of drilled this into our family for a while, but we are kind of one of our badges is that we wear is that we're really good at repair. Like
Mm,
we
so
don't um because we're hotheads and because there's always a tension and always somebody's always pissing somebody's off or somebody's always
mm,
doing something like we could either put all this extra energy into trying to be calmer or less reactive, which would sure, that's
right,
important. But
right.
like we've shifted over to kind of going because we're always going to be stepping on each other's toes, are we
Mhm.
also good at saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry I stepped on your toes?" Like, are we really sorry
Mhm.
saying, I'm going to try and be more careful and forgive me if I'm clumsy. So like my kids
Mhm.
will tell you that our family is good at repair.
Mhm.
Um, and
Mhm.
it sort of forgives us for
Mhm.
not being good at not arguing,
Right.
you know,
And we
like,
know as marriage helpers and also from Terry's book that it's just not, I mean, much more from just the actual life of you doing this work for over a dozen years and me as well, is like when somebody doesn't talk about anything, it's just a recipe for disaster. So
hmm
absolutely love hearing that you're good at repairs. That's real marriage. And that's one of our themes on our show is it's real. You know, we dig deep and we're honest. And it doesn't mean everyone gets everything, right? Because this is a public space, but we try to really just be honest about where we're at. So thank you for
yeah,
naming that that's a way to move through the world because there's a lot of perfectionists or others listening that might feel I'm not allowed to show anger. I'm not allowed to be real. And you've just, in a way, given permission. So thank you.
yeah, yeah, no, I don't even know what I would do with I mean, I guess I do know what I would do with some kind of restriction on what I was allowed or not allowed to feel. Because, feelings, of course, they just sort of happen to you. Like if you walk outside and the wind is blowing and it's cold, like you feel cold. Like that is a
Yeah.
thing that like feelings are feelings. They just occur.
Yeah.
What you then do now becomes the thing. So for somebody to tell me I'm not allowed to feel, or I'm like, well, hold on a second. How am I not allowed to feel cold?
Right.
Like what I'm
Right.
not allowed to do is freak out or, you know, ball up and die or, or blame somebody else for how cold I am. Like I think that's the real work.
Yeah, yep, I agree. And healthy family systems allow one another to have their feelings and then to learn how to process them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our listeners, when they did come from family systems where they had to be more compliant, they never learned that. And so you just gave people express permission. I love it. I know
Yeah.
that's part of Terry's system as well. Tell everybody a little bit about the basic premise. Today's episode, we're positioning it as hearing a bit about your family. So I'd love you to intersperse any
hmm
examples you want to, and also hearing about Terry's system, which is very helpful. And I have some particulars too, but I wonder if you could
Yeah.
just briefly give us an overview.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start kind of where Terry starts. And what he likes to say is that relational life therapy is about relational life therapy is that other methodologies will give you tools,
Mhm.
and we want to work with the part of you that doesn't use tools. So I'm in a pretty unique position in the sense that I'm also a certified Gottman therapist. I think I'm actually the only
Oh, yeah.
therapist right now who's certified in both methodologies.
Mhm.
But John Gottman's work is very tool based. It's very much about equipping people with the right skills to build their friendship, to manage conflict, to think about pursuing goals and dreams. What where Terry has come in is he said, okay, but great, those are all great, but sometimes people don't use them. Why don't they use them? Well, they don't use them because of childhood trauma, or they don't use them because they're not equipped in the Enneagram to use certain kinds of skills, or they're not, or they're addicted. They're drunk all the time. Like there's reasons people don't use the skills. And so what relational life therapy does is it examines kind of the origin story, the that is informing why people show up the way they do, and then what moves they need to make from that place. So it's not universal or sort of blankety the way that the Gottman method sometimes gets presented. I
Yeah.
always say that John Gottman is like a mad scientist, and Terry's more like a warrior poet. And
Mm.
the reality is, if you're building your like ideal Dungeons and Dragons crew to go on a
Yeah.
quest, you want a mad scientist and you want a warrior poet. You want them both.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
being able to have fluidity in both methodologies, but it's Terry's work that's really been part of my, I think, leveling up as a human and leveling up as a husband and leveling up as a dad.
Mm.
It's a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a weird coincidence because I don't know if I've actually found the exact right language, but I I got sober about 4.5 years ago. I just quit drinking in the middle of COVID because I was ruining my life, and so I got into recovery.
Good for you.
Terry's RLT is based in what's called relational recovery.
Mhm.
So it really is about kind of uh, becoming free from your addictions in a way that helps you be more present. But the addiction is to all of these old inherent strategies that we built in because of our family of origin or because of our, you know, different trauma experiences. Um, and so I feel really lucky because I was sort of doing both in parallel. Like I was sort of learning and becoming an expert in RLT, like kind of alongside my actual sobriety journey.
Wow.
And I also feel really lucky because early in my sobriety journey, I became aware that like alcohol was not my drug of choice. Anger was my drug of choice. Anger and resentment really were my like real, and it was RLT that
Mm-hmm.
helped me recover from that far more than 12 steps. I was involved in 12 steps for a while, but like the RLT methodology really helped me get a good look at like what was going on for me, why was it going on for me, and then what leverage did I have, what options did I have to move. And I can speak a little bit to like the particulars of his approach. Maybe you have specific questions, but just conceptually, that's where it lives in my personal and professional brain. Is
Yeah.
kind of how I've come to revere it both as a professional way to deal with couples and alongside the Gottman method, but also just personally,
Mhm.
it's really informed a lot of my own
Mhm.
just like responsibility taking for myself, my
I
like capital S self, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you brought in that he looks at sort of the epigenetics, the parent, the child that we still bring into the marriage. I love
Mm-hmm.
that you named that you leveled up as a man. I noticed in his book, he talks about how he also had to level up as a man, and he relates to every man or woman listening who's living a narcissistic, grandiose, or immature side of themselves. So if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about that, just for men in general or people in
Yeah.
general, we grew up, most of us, in whether it was Gen X, baby boomer, some of the millennials, even a very patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Some people love that thread.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable. And how was that part of it, just noticing you had to level up as a man too?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big part of Terry's work where he is really working to uh, we try real hard to stay away from like combative language or like war
Yeah.
language, but he's trying to combat
Mhm.
the impact of patriarchy. And people are like, "Oh, that's a buzzword and that's not really real." And I'm kind of like,
Mhm.
I don't understand that kind of response. Like when you're talking about patriarchy, it's kind of like talking about gravity. Like it is a thing. Like
Yeah.
it's not there's no disputing whether or not it's a thing. You know,
Mhm.
men, most men, and then particularly most white men, and particularly most white men with money,
Mhm.
and who are straight and who are, in the right, religious demographic or whatever,
Mhm.
they hold more power than everyone else, and
Mhm.
that's just true. Like, sorry about that. If you don't like it, like I don't know what data you're using, but like you look around, literally look around, whether it's the government or your neighborhood, and
Mhm.
those guys like me and Wes, like we can walk down the street and we are fine.
Mhm.
We are totally fine, and everyone else who is not like us is less fine than us, and that is just the reality. So
Mhm.
that understanding that as actually is the beginning, like, and it's not even like I'm not even vilifying it. I'm just saying
Right.
we just have to like recognize that that is real.
Right.
And why that's important is because in any relationship anywhere ever, one person has more power than the other. And when one person has power over another person, it is a challenge for that to be
A partner.
a relationship where like do equal a partnership, a teammate. Like that is just it's just harder.
Mhm.
So okay, fine. That's going to exist in the military. It's going to exist in the government. It's going to exist in the marketplace. It's going to exist in your church. It's going to exist in your backyard. When it exists in your marriage, it's painful. It's painful for the person who has less power. And
Mhm.
so so people end up in our office and they're trying to mitigate or understand how do we do this thing that we're looking for called partnership. Well, that invites each partner to figure out how they get into that equal place. And for the partner who has more power, they have to come down, and for the partner who has more power, they have to come up. So this is getting into some of Terry's like really specific language. Like
Mhm.
um, he has a he has a model that he uses called the relationship grid and has two axes, and one axis is around self-esteem. People have too much self-esteem. They're labeled grandiose, or the label that often gets is called one up.
Mhm.
And people who have too little self-esteem, they're shameful, and that is one down. And because of the way quadrants work, you can be very grandiose,
Mhm.
you can be very shame based, or you can be just kind of shame based or kind of grandiose.
Mhm.
I definitely am one up. I gravitate up, but
Mhm.
not a lot. Like I'm kind of just above the horizon. I'm like kind of one up,
Mhm.
in part because a lot of the work that I've done, I've definitely come down over the last few years
Yeah.
from this place of like not only having but also wielding power.
Yeah.
Um, so which I still do. I just try to do it in a much more relational way now. But
Mhm.
I'm up and my wife is down. Like so I'm one up, she's one down,
Mhm.
and the work that we have to do on a daily basis is meet in the middle. I have to come down off my high horse with enough humility and openness to
Mhm.
appreciate what she's bringing to the table, and she has to stand up for herself. She has to learn how to bring her courage and her, you know,
Desires.
point of view and advocate for herself.
Mhm.
And we have to meet in the middle. And the middle is, appropriate esteem. Not too much, not too little. We're all the same.
Mhm.
And this is challenging work. Like this is challenging work, but we try to do it, both in office, but also like I send people out. I'm like, I think you need to go read about humility, or I think you need to go read about empowerment. And
Mhm.
I'm not like go read a book guy, but like
Yeah.
learn about humility or learn about empowerment, so
Mhm.
that so that you can actually meet in a place that is mutually edifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I love.
That's axis one, and we can talk about axis two in a second. But I'll pause just to see if you have any, like, you want to drill down in that space at all.
Yeah, well, that is a great place to name that. I also know Terry talks right there about how women can rise up to meet that strength. And I've done that too. My husband's got a very patriarchal background. And also, I even talked with somebody this week about legacy being patriarchal. Some people, I think, come at it from that angle. And so they're thinking about, like, oh, it's fine, matriarch and patriarch, and almost just the partnership of those words. So
You
I get
wish, yeah.
talking about that. But unfortunately, what I've read from Terry, and I know you can speak to this, is women rising up to try to meet that power with equal force and equal narcissism or grandiosity, again, which I've done before, leads to a lot of reactivity that's not as healthy as both partners coming into soft strength. So I wondered if you could speak to that and how you've helped couples to navigate that when they are trying to level up together, or maybe that's part of the access to conversation we're about to have.
Well, I think, you know, there's always the danger outside of maturity that if you're trying to come down off your high horse, and I'm really good at this, for example, I'll come down off my high horse and I'll be like, fine, I don't need to do anything. Like you can be in charge. You're the boss. You go
Mhm.
ahead, babe. And that's not really mature. That's not really thoughtful.
Yeah.
I'm just boomeranging down to kind of like
Wes did
overcorrect,
that to
right?
me last week. Yes.
On the other side, Rebecca,
Yeah.
these women who are down and they start to find language or they start to find their voice, and they start to like wield it with this kind of really aggressive or right self-righteous
Mhm.
reclamation space. Like it doesn't help to go up. It doesn't help to respond by being one down, by being one up.
Yeah.
What it helps is to learn how to come into the middle. And I talk a lot about the difference between desire and demand,
Mhm.
like, and learning how to live in a place of desire where you can grapple with things like disappointment and grief or joy, versus demand where you go to resentment, or if you get what you want, you're like entitlement, you know. And so I think the it's weird because here we are on this podcast and we're not doing therapy right now, but the therapeutic work is helping, let's say in this case we're going to go ahead and gender it, like helping women
Yeah.
express their desire with confidence and helping men receive that with grace. And then you can actually negotiate, but if there's demand or if there's entitlement or resentment that's all built into that, it would be, it's just really hard to expect there to be intimacy.
Yeah, you
And
just named it. And there's a lot of new research. Sheila Ray Gregoire is a name that a lot of our listeners know. We've had her on the show a few times. She's an eight. She has daughters who are in the five space, and they've done a lot of research around churched women, and they're showing the huge statistic that evangelical women who are in patriarchal relationships where they're under power are not as satisfied with their sex life and their life in general as when they're partnered. And it's so helpful that you
yeah,
are naming that as general research. She's naming it as faith-based research. All in all, we're learning this is the way to do it, is to show respect. And so thank you for shedding light on that. What are the access to sorts of trainings that you would do? Is this where the feedback wheel comes in? I think that is such a helpful concept. So maybe we could talk about that as well.
okay. So I'll take this in two parts.
Okay, perfect.
The relationship grid
Yeah.
has a has two axes. There's the vertical axis, which is about self-esteem. The horizontal axis is about boundaries. This is about psychological boundaries. It's not about boundaries around fidelity or money or something. It's really about how you give and take challenging, or how you give and take emotion, basically. Um, and just like in the first one, where there's kind of these two labels of one up and one down in the extreme, the horizontal axis has what's called boundaryless and walled off. So if our boundaries are too porous, meaning we don't have a effective filter for keeping stuff in or keeping stuff out.
Mhm.
So like if someone insults me and I take that hyper personally, that's because my protective boundary is too porous. Or if I have something that's on my mind that is like, maybe I say it in a way that isn't kind or isn't even necessary, like
Mhm.
that's because my containing boundary is too porous. On the opposite side,
Mhm.
you can be walled off, meaning you're grappling with negative emotion, or you're grappling with anything that doesn't feel great, and you, instead of grappling with it, you just block it off, or you just shut it out or shut it down.
Mhm.
So because you have these kind of two extremes, um, then of course you also have the middle section, which is appropriate boundaries. You know, that I have a reasonable filter for stuff that's inside of me that I need to let out, and stuff that maybe is coming at me that I need to vet whether or not it's coming in. And that's called the center of health. Center of health is appropriate boundaries, appropriate esteem, where we're the same, we're protected and connected. Outside of that, though, when we're at our worst, we gravitate typically into one of these four quadrants: one up and walled off, one down and walled off, one down and boundaryless, one up and boundaryless. I am kind of one up, but I'm very walled off. So I'm like just above the horizon, but I'm pretty far out west on the grid if you're looking at it like a map.
Mhm.
Rebecca she's in the opposite quadrant. She's one down and boundaryless.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
too.
while we have like 8-2 energy, we also have this one up walled off energy working alongside one down boundaryless energy. When couples can find that, as we now have a sense of directionality about where we need to go. So I need to come down and I need to open up. And she
Yeah.
needs to stand up for herself, and she needs to limit the ways that she's
Exhausting.
filtering information in and out. So when we are hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and
Mhm.
we float out into those places, things get a lot harder for us. When we can bring awareness and consciousness to it, we can come into the middle, and that's where we are most successful. And so relational life therapy work is really about helping people first of all, understand where they are, why they're there,
Mhm.
and then give them some directionality about how to move into the center of health, which is where like maturity can live. And and then you start to introduce things like the feedback wheel. Then you start to give them tools to say, because if you give somebody that tool
Mhm.
and they are still out in their quadrant place, they will weaponize it. That is true of almost any tool. Like if people are not in their healthy place, they will weaponize their tools.
So
And that's almost a betrayal, right? Because, oh, well, we learned this in our workshop, and why aren't we doing it? Well,
Mhm.
because you're not doing you're not showing up as a functional adult, you know.
Mhm.
um, so I'll pause to see if I've answered at least the first half of your question. If you want to talk about the feedback wheel, I love that tool, and I'm happy to talk about it
Oh
too.
my gosh. Yes, I think couples listening, individuals listening, just noticing that you're talking about, we've had Dr. Dan Siegel on the podcast, having a healthy window of tolerance open, use the HALT
Mm-hmm.
acronym. You're talking about healthy differentiation. This is all important to, obviously, you're saying Terry Real's work. We know for Enneagram, it's the same thing. You can weaponize, oh, you're just a full eight, you're a
Yeah,
terrible person, whatever it
what they
is.
call them, eight holes.
Eight holes. Yeah, I was gonna say but whatever the type is, by the way, we can weaponize it. And so
Yeah.
we have that fundamental attribution error. And I love that you're just saying, like, we'll always have that sense of most of us tend toward that availability bias, or I'm a little bit better, I'm a little bit healthier. But some are going to tend toward, like you said, I'm full of shame. It's all you. You're amazing. I'm terrible. Our twos can do that. Our fours can do that. And a few others. And so I like that you're naming if you're able to do your own differentiation work of knowing I have worth, which I've heard Terry say a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
We're all equal. No one is better or worse than the other. Every human comes into the world and leaves the world with equal worth and belovedness. And
Mm-hmm.
then from that space, knowing that you can hold that with hungry, angry, lonely, tired, halt, looking at that and saying, am I healthy enough to enter into this? Now we can give the tools. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much for slowing us down to do that. Tell
Yeah.
us more about the feedback wheel because I do think this is a tool people could take from today.
Yeah. The feedback wheel is actually a pretty basic tool.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's not its origin story, but its roots are also in a tool that the Gottman method offers, which is called the soften startup. And the soften startup is I feel about what and I need. And it's basically learning how to talk about yourself. This is what I feel. And again, feelings, they need to be inside your body. Like when you say I feel like, you've moved outside your body. So you've created like a differentiation from like, I mean, you're automatically one step removed. When you say I feel like you,
Mhm.
I feel like you, Krista, are that's not a feeling, that's a judgment, you know. And so you got to stay inside your body. I feel about what a thing that actually happens, a thing that happens, and then I need again go back to demand and desire. That's the basic template that I think has been around for centuries. The Gottmans labeled it soften startup. Terry has evolved it with two extra pieces that I think are actually really really critical. Um, the first one is um, is now a good time.
Mhm.
It's getting consent to say, I there's something I got to talk to you about. Is now a good time? You know, if it's
Mhm.
not a good time, it's not going to go well. Like, do not use the food walk wheel if it's not a good time. Your partner not ready because they're about to go to bed or they're in work mode or maybe
Mhm.
they've been drinking or whatever. Like, start with consent building when it comes to using any tool. Period.
Okay.
And then you click into like the actual tool itself, which is on the feedback wheel. The way Terry has designed it, there's a first step, which is like this is what happened.
Mhm.
And when you're describing what happened, you got to be as concise as possible and you got to make sure you're talking about yourself.
Mhm.
So, this is what happened for me.
Okay.
The story I always use is actually with Rebecca, and when I'm teaching people this, but I was, let me do this real quick.
Mhm.
I, I had wanted to watch this tennis match on television that had been played earlier in the afternoon. I got home from work and I wanted to watch it. She wanted to watch it with me. And so I sat down after I got home. I looked at the internet. I was going to find out who won, which I didn't want to do. So I was ready to start it. And as I got ready to start it, she said, "Hey, could you pause it? Carrie just got here." So I was like, "No problem." So I paused it. Um, she sat down with Carrie and they talked for like a half hour. And
Mhm.
I got livid. I got so mad. I just was boiling. Like literally, it was like boil. Like somebody turned on the boiler, and I just got hotter and hotter and hotter. She came down to grab something for Carrie like a half hour later, and she looked at me and could tell I was mad. She's like, What's wrong with you?" I go, "What do you mean? What's wrong with me? I've been sitting here for a half hour. I want to know who won this tennis match. You're just up there jabbering with Carrie. Blah blah blah." She goes back upstairs and she sits down on the couch and she says to Carrie, "So tell me about your trip to Ireland." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you dirty rat! Like this is,
Right.
you know." So
Right.
I'm sitting there fuming more and more and more. She comes back down, unpause the TV show. I make her pay for like an hour because I'm, withdrawn and I'm walled off and I'm so angry about it. And then the next day, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out like what happened for me, like what was going on. Why did I get so mad about this event? So
Mhm.
we're on our way. We're walking to a football game, and I say, "Hey, is now a good time to talk about what happened yesterday?" It's because we knew we had about 10 minutes, and I was like, "It's not gonna take long. I
Mhm.
just want to, can I just tell you what happened? Can we
Okay.
talk about it?" And she was like, "Well, nothing, da da da." I go, "Actually, what I want to tell you is I don't think you did anything wrong. I mean, when you asked about Ireland, that was a twist in the knife, but that's on me. I set that up. But I'm not talking to you about what you did wrong. I'm talking about what happened for me. What happened for me was I sat down, I wanted to watch this show. I heard you say, would you pause it? I waited. I got angry. I got angrier. Then I lashed out, and then I heard you ask Carrie about Ireland, and then I was gone. I was gone for the night. That's what happened for me.
Yeah.
I have enough awareness. I was able to say, I actually think you were being a really good friend to Carrie. I actually think again, I don't think you did anything wrong. But
Mhm.
I know that for me, okay, so that's step one. Here's what happened for me.
Yeah. Mhm.
Step two is identifying the feelings that you had. It made me angry. I felt lonely. I
Mhm.
felt sad. I was very careful not to say I felt disrespected or I felt rejected because those again are just judgments.
Yeah,
But I
that's so good.
felt
Stuck
I
with
felt
you.
hot and I felt disconnected. Um, so that's still inside. Here's what happened. Here's what I felt. And
Mhm.
and before you get to what you need though, there's a second part, which is here's the story I made up about that.
Yeah, that's so
I
important.
made up a story that you didn't care about me. I made up a story that you didn't think my time was valuable. I made up a story that you thought Carrie was more important than me. I made up a story and actually, hold on, I put them in the wrong order. Here's what happened for me. Here's the story I made up about it.
Mhm. This is the way it made
The
me.
feelings I had
Mhm.
were about the story I made up.
Mhm.
The
Right.
feelings I had weren't about what you did. The feelings I had were about the story you made up, that
Right.
I made up.
As you did have those feelings based
Yeah.
upon what happened, but the filter was your
There
narrative.
was something in between,
Mhm.
right? Because I could have made up this story. Man, she's such a good friend. I'm so lucky
Right.
to be
And
married
this
to
is
somebody who
your
like cares for people.
yeah, is this her
And I'm
friend
really glad
Carrie?
that
Yeah, or is this her daughter Carrie? I know that's not super
no,
relevant.
Carrie's just a friend.
Okay.
Yeah, Carrie's just a friend who was ever. Oh, I'm so glad that Rebecca's such a good friend. That Carrie has somebody. I'm so glad that modern technology exists that I can pause this show for 15 hours if I want. Like I could have made up that story and then I wouldn't have had any of the other feelings. I would have
Mhm.
had other feelings. I would have felt grateful. I would have felt relaxed. I would have felt. Here's
Mhm.
another thing that I knew, which was if Rebecca had said, "Hey, can you pause that for a sec? Can you pause that? I'm well, Carrie just got here. I'll be there in a half hour."
Mhm.
If she had said I'll be there in a half hour, I would have been done. I would have been like, fine, I'll do a crossword. I'll watch something else. I
Yeah.
will like so it really is about the story. So that's the fourth part. I said, here's what I need. I just need you to let me know how long it's gonna take. Like I have a very particular story in my life, Chris, I'm telling you, I have a very particular story in my life
Mhm.
about feeling disconnected from time and space because
Mhm.
of a relationship I had with my dad in middle school and a specific thing that he did where I felt untethered from time and space for like 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And in that period of time, upon reflection, I know now how important it is for me to know about time and space. If I go to the dentist,
Mhm.
I'm anxious about not knowing how long it's going to take. So I always say, how long is this going to take? And I don't care if he says 10 minutes or 2 hours.
You want to know.
Literally, he could say 10 minutes. I'll be like, great. He says 2 hours. I'm like, fine. Doesn't matter to me. But if I don't know, I am I'm crawling out of my skin. That's why I'm such a great therapist because my
Mhm.
appointments are 50 minutes or they're 80 minutes. And that's how long this conversation is going to be. And I know how to do the rhythm and I know how to da, da. If I go to a fundraiser, I can be the auctioneer. I can run the whole thing. I can be up on stage. I can execute, knock it out of the park. So raise $1 million. But if I have no job, I'm like, I'm going to stand in the corner. Rebecca, how long do we have to be here? Do I have to talk to anybody? What's the deal? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
aware of all of this stuff. And that's the story that is building up in me that then gave me access to anger, resentment, pain, fear. So, having said that story, I'll go through the feedback wheel really quick. Hey, Rebecca, is now a good time? Yes. Um, Yesterday, the thing with Carrie and the TV show, do you remember that? Yes. I made up a story that you didn't care about me and that you didn't respect my time. And that made me feel really, really angry and sad. So that's part one, part two, part three. Part four, can you just be better about like orienting me to time? Like another example would be like when you tell me you're going to be home soon. I don't know if that's like 3 minutes or 20 minutes. And I don't know if soon includes a store to the grocery store. So just tell me you're going to be home in 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Mhm.
Like that would just help me. Just help me.
Yeah.
Again, babe, you didn't do anything wrong. You did not do anything wrong. This is what I need.
Mhm.
So in that way, I'm coming down off of my like righteousness. I'm coming down off my high horse because I was annoyed and I had a reasonable expectation to watch that show when I wanted to watch that show.
Mhm.
But I also gave her permission to come up and be like, I'm not trying to shame you. I am not trying to make you feel bad. I don't even really need an apology. That's not what I needed. I didn't need an apology for that. I needed just in the future for you to just do it differently.
Mhm.
And then I made sure to add this because I think it's important to say. I said, oh, by the way, I want to know about things that you would like me to do more of, and I want to know about things you'd like me to do less of. Like, this isn't a one-way street. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
sitting here. Is now a good time? I need to run my beef with you. Like, let's do this because let me know. I'll do more things that you like, and I'll do fewer things that you don't like because I don't want to feel like I felt like yesterday, and I want more access to better stories.
Yeah.
And so, I that's what I do. I proactively right now try to make up better stories because I think from the better story, you get to you get a little bit more freedom. But that's a totally different topic and tool, I think.
Yeah, but that's profound that couples don't have to wait for their partner to always tell the better story. Some partners are not going to react very well, even though you did it so beautifully. And so,
It took me, by the way, it took me a full day to like work through and craft my self awareness and like getting over myself. Like it took a while. I could not have done that feedback wheel immediately after the tennis match,
Thank
you
you
know?
for saying that because that is really, you talked about the one up, and you're just reminding us when we're going to tend toward withdrawing and one up or whatever our positioning, we may need time to get into that space where we're
Oh
ready
my God.
to
Yeah.
do this feedback will, anyone, therapists included.
Yeah.
And then I'm just mentioning, and the person might take time to reflect back on why before you tell us what that person might say. I do want to ask another brief question, and that is,
Sure.
when you're in that space, Zach, of saying, this is something I'm noting from my dad, do you think the first time or two that we say that to our partners, whatever the memory may be, most of us do have one, even if it's a little T trauma, it's something that happened that shaped us in a certain way. Do you think it's helpful to put that in at a different time or at the same time? Remember what I told you about my dad? Well, that was part of my
hmm
narrative.
Yeah. Here's what I've come to. I've been trying to form my theology of trauma, family of origin, how it fits in the scene. And I
Mhm.
think this is what I've come to. I think I've been joking the last couple of weeks. I think I figured out what love is. I know what love is now. I've defined it, and I also know what maturity is. So I'm going to give them to you both here for a second. But
Okay, you got
those of
it.
us who are in who have church background,
Mhm.
I think theology. I think love is generosity. That's what I think it is. I think, and it's embedded in kind of two, like the two main stories, Christmas of Easter. Christmas is God gave. There's the verb, gave His Son. Right there it is. He gave it to the earth. Like, and then Easter is Son gave His life. Like so. I
Mhm.
don't care if you are Christian or not, but like the
Yeah.
heart of that theology is this one verb, give. Right, gave. So that's what I've decided. That's what I'm going with.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm looking for ways to be generous in my relationship.
No, that's really amazing that we are just noticing together that generosity, charity, these are loving ways that you've learned. This is what I want to bring. This is what I
hmm
want to give in my relationship.
So maturity, I've decided, is also out of the Bible. It's or at least an echo of it anyway. And it's something maybe it's out of Corinthians, but it's this thing that will ring in your ear, which is when I was a child, I used to think like this and talk like this,
Mhm.
but then when I was an adult, I put these ways behind me. Like I
Mhm.
think maturity is putting um retiring the old narratives and replacing them with new narratives. Retiring the old, it's not like I don't use comic books anymore. It's more like I'm not, I don't need to be married to this old story I have about my dad. So now I'll answer your question.
Mhm.
I think that when we have the ability to reflect on our story and say to our partner, hey, by the way, this doesn't have, some of this doesn't have anything to do with you. Some of this is about a story you know or a story you don't know that
Mhm.
predates you. Some of this is really connected to my dad, or some of this is about my first college girlfriend, or some of this is about
Mhm.
I just got a phone call with my boss. I think that's actually an act of generosity. I think it's giving away a little bit of your um, you know defensive position in order to say to my partner, look, I want to give you that. I want to give you this extra piece of information so that you now can, so we have more access to understanding or more access to love. Um, and so, whether or not it's expertly delivered or whether or not it's thoroughly examined, even just the ability to say, hey, to be fair, a pretty important chunk of this has nothing to do with you.
Mhm.
And I just need to be sensitive to that part for a second,
That's
you know?
good. Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I think about that. Um, like what is the role or the purpose of examining, your story, your historical story, your family of origin story, your trauma story.
Mhm.
I think it's to gain a little bit more access to generosity,
Mm. Yeah, I love it.
and to level up. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
those of us who don't examine our trauma or don't examine our like why do I act like this? All we're doing is clinging to our old narratives that are keeping us locked in our childish thinking.
Mhm.
And I would maybe even add like that's drunk thinking. Like that's not, it's thinking like an addict. It's not thinking like somebody who's sober of mind and of posture and of spirit.
Yeah, I love that. It's not mature. And the way you come through is healthily humble when you say, some of this is not you. It's just my own,
Sometimes, yeah.
childish inference or the things that have built me to this day. And there's something both humbling, but also, as you said, empowering for those who were in that shameful positioning to be able to speak their voice and say anything. Let's be honest, sometimes just saying something at all, speaking as a woman, I know that just saying anything sometimes when I'm confronting somebody, it's like my voice gets shaky and it's hard to do
Hmm.
that because there's so much fear around the power that's going to come back to you. So giving a story to it can soften the blow, if you will. Of course, we don't want to use this for people in domestic abuse situations, but it's
Hmm.
so important for people who are able to do some dialogue to say,
Yeah.
come into power or take your power down a little by sharing these stories. I think that's great. I also loved how you were saying, don't worry about exact timing for getting this in or expertise. We all stumble through, as you heard me
Yeah.
say a moment ago. But with my own husband, I don't say I'm scared, but I do a little bit feel that. So once in a while I've said it and he's always like, why? And I'm like, well, I mean, my own dad was scary to me.
Hmm.
So when I talk to you, I position you like that. And he's like, but I haven't done those things. And I'm like, I know. And thank you for reminding me that
Right.
you're not going to do that to me, but you are a
Right.
man and you have a powerful countenance. So sometimes I equate that. So I
Yeah.
think it's okay to do that. And I'm also curious, like I said, like when our partner is this revelatory to us and they're coming in softer, I know and you know, especially our body types. I just was working with a nine this morning, even though they're softer, sometimes eights, nines, and ones. Myself, I can do this too, but we can say no for an instinctual first. Like even if they use the method perfectly, our
Yeah.
first instinct might be like, I don't want to hear it. So, what
Yeah.
can we do when we are presented with this format and we're still feeling yucky?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be learned, and I'm an eight, so I'm a body type, and I'm respond reactive, and I have had to learn
Mhm.
uh, just to nurture and expand the pause between my impulse and my response. And literally, that is how I talk about it. I have gotten better and better and better over the last, I would say, 3 years in particular, of pausing between what Terry sometimes labels the whoosh. Like there's a whoosh response that kind of comes up in you, and then what I'm going to do about that whoosh. Because
Mhm.
usually my first, second, third, fourth responses are not as healthy as my fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth responses, which I can only access if I wait long enough.
Wow.
And so I have just learned how to, honestly, I literally practice. And most often I practice in the car because in the car, and then like impulsively, I want to like speed up or I want to like make sure they know I'm sad or I want to flick them off. And then I go, hold on a second. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to get shot because maybe if I flick them off, like, what is that doing for me? And I literally have learned how to be like, what song's on the radio?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a nice song. I
Mhm.
like that song. And then I forgot about that guy and he no longer has any more power over me.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's kind of the way I talk about my dad. This guy, he had a lot of power over me for a very long time and well into my 40s. He was dead 10 years, still haunts me until I did some of this work and really got to like, oh, yeah, no, he doesn't get to have all that power. Like I still have responsibility. And when I say that word, I always clarify it's the ability to respond. And
Yeah.
I have a response ability, and seizing that and owning it is actually what's powerful. Like that's where real power is. I have the ability to respond here. I'm not subject to the whoosh or the whim or the story even.
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And even just you saying that reminds me of how we can enact our own parents. And I've heard Terry talk about that too. And I know that with my dad. And I can just eight wing out and be just like him, as I said, rising up and meeting Wes and even exceeding Wes in an unhealthy, grandiose space. And so it's so helpful to remember we are allowed to pause. We are allowed to work on expanding the pause instead of increasing ourselves to make ourselves more
yeah,
powerful like
yeah,
that dominant person in our childhood. And I was lucky enough to have the fortunate moment with my dad before the end of his life where he said sorry
mhm,
for that. But it doesn't change the narrative that existed, even
yeah,
though I was grateful.
yeah,
It's something that whether we laid it to rest 40 years ago or we laid it, still working on laying it to rest, these narratives are powerful. So you're saying sometimes it deserves and needs a pause. So don't expect your partner to come in with this perfect wrapped bow afterwards every time, right?
yeah. Well, and yeah, totally, 100%. And just kind of this idea of like what you got from your dad. I'm glad that you got it. And then of course mine was dead
Right, right.
before I got anything. And I grieved that for a while. I was like, I'm never gonna get the thing that I need. And now I'm like, I actually don't need that. I want it. Like I got bigger fish to fry and I got two kids to raise. And I'm not gonna sit around going, woe is me. I never got what I needed from my dad. For my dad, I'm gonna make sure my kids don't have that story.
Yes, absolutely.
You
And
know?
I'm telling you, I got it. And it's still really like I was grateful, but it was like, it was just a moment. It wasn't like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, the floodgates opened, everything changed. You know, it was just
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I'm glad you cleared your conscience before
Yeah.
you passed. And thank
Yeah.
you. But like, I'm still totally
Good job, Dad.
traumatized.
You read it another way.
And so, yes, gratefully
But
learned to
honestly,
change
like,
it.
I mean, here's a really good example. Like, for the longest time, I told myself a story that my dad didn't love me, that he was a coward, that he was oblivious,
Mhm.
and that all that did was like make me feel gross.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
now I'm kind of like,
yeah.
man, poor guy, he missed out on so much, and
Yeah.
he didn't. I'm sorry
Mm,
he didn't have the skills, and
right.
I bet he wishes that he had done better because people do wish that they do had done better. And
Yes.
I've created in like his death and in my recovery just a different story that
Mhm.
now I walk around and I'm not like all pissed off all the time about my dad. I'm like, oh, sorry, buddy. Like my
Yeah.
kids are amazing. They both are graduating right now, and like that's too
Amazing.
bad you don't know my kids. Like that would have been really fun for you. Now I'm gonna go do the next thing. Now I'm gonna go
Yeah.
like gonna go get a sandwich. You
Yeah,
know, like
exactly. And that's the same with our marriages. Is like now we've done this repair, we can go on and live our beautiful lives together, and they're going to have ups and downs. And thank you for just normalizing that. But
yeah,
there are repairs, there are ways to level up in every way together. And this is a great system. Along with Gottman, we've had Gottman specialists on as well. Some of my
mhm,
staff are Gottman specialists. And I just thank you so much. There's so much more we could talk about, but I'd
yeah,
love for people to get to hear where they can find you because you are awesome. And you also have Marriage Therapy Radio. People need
yeah.
to be listening to your show. So tell us more about you and where they can find you, Zach.
Well, I mean, the internet is easy, right? Like you just type in my first and last name. I think I'm the only one with my name. So you can like zachbrittle.com is my personal site. I think I have a blog out there somewhere. But yeah, my side hustle passion project is Marriage Therapy Radio, which I've been doing for almost 8 years now. We've done a little bit of a format shift. I'm interviewing couples. Like I'm just interviewing a lot of couples. So you and Wes obviously came on. That was fun. And then I've had a bunch of other people. And I have this incredible benefit privilege that you also have, which is I talk to couples all the time, talk to tons. My end sample for how relationships work, my sample size is very, very, very big.
Mhm.
And most people's sample size is not that big.
Right.
It's their parents and maybe there's partner's parents, maybe some couple they watched on TV, like, or whatever and maybe this other couple from their church, or maybe it's their friends, but they got about five couples that they're paying attention to, and that's how they're forming their
Mhm.
perspective. And I'm like, well, what if you get to talk to more? So I'm just talking to more, and it's a great place to go and listen to how other people have kind of made it work. And I'm learning something new from every couple I talk to. And but yeah, that's comes out every Tuesday. MarriageTherapyRadio.com or Marriage Therapy Radio is just the place I'm at.
Mm.
And I think not that it matters, but it doesn't matter. I was going to give them your episode number, but again, the internet's pretty, you can pretty much find anything. You'll figure it out.
Oh, thank you so much. We really enjoyed being on your show. Guys, he's an amazing host. He asks really thoughtful, deep, provoking questions because he's an eight. So it's exciting. And I loved that. And
Yeah,
so I hope you
thanks.
guys check that out too, but all of your episodes. So thank you so
I'll
much.
put in a mini plug too. If you want to be on the show, if you want to just come on and be interviewed yourself, like I want couples who have kind of everybody experiences. I want famous couples. I want to interview like, Jim from The Office and what's
Mm,
her name? Oh
Pam.
shoot. No, Jim and Pam would be amazing, but John Krasinski
Oh,
and
Emily Blunt. Yeah.
Emily Blunt, yeah, like I want them too, like whatever. So if you know them, great. If you're just a regular everybody on the street, great. I'm just happy to talk to people about what makes it tick for them, and I welcome your desire to share your story on to the whole world if you want. You
Yeah.
just email me.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, you just brought everybody in through that big eight.
yeah, let's do it. Let's have a big party.
Yay. Thank you, Zach, so much. This has been awesome.
Very cool. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. It was such a delight getting to talk with Zach, getting to process through that. I left my friend a message all about it too, just to get her through it. And of course, I'm sharing the best of all we learn here together with my clients. I hope that you guys will reach out if you need services this summer. But otherwise, I hope you are checking out the work of Zach, of Terry Real, the last of the NES Summit, which all of that is in the show notes. And I hope you will have such a good day. I will check in with you this midweek. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.